With there being so many incredible demos during the latest Steam Next Fest, such as Clover Pit, Dispatch, or Mina the Hollower, I wanted to talk about one game in particular that I haven't really seen too many people talking about, that being AEROMACHINA. So, what exactly is AEROMACHINA? Well, basically, it's a PSX-inspired, low-poly, 3D platformer / Metroidvania where you'll not only fight, but also fly through the ruins of human civilization as Bogey, an amnesiac android evolved from the remains of an abandoned aircraft. And with the help of some new allies, you'll hopefully find the answers to humanity's disappearance, as well as Bogey's very existence. Now, aside from its interesting premise, what really stood out to me about AEROMACHINA would have to be its movement. In particular, I really enjoyed how some of the movement abilities synergize with each other by building up momentum. For example, while the Vario wings are incredibly useful on their own, as they allow you to glide across gaps, they're only able to go so fast. But by combining it with other abilities like the dash or the rotary blades, you're able to gain some extra momentum and glide much further than you normally could. So, instead of feeling like separate upgrades, every ability you unlock is part of a larger cohesive system, with each one building up on the last, opening up new and improved ways to traverse through the environment. However, the game doesn't just encourage you to combine these abilities, it also gives you a ton of freedom in how you combine them. Basically, most of your movement abilities can be used one after another, allowing you to combine them together in multiple different ways. This not only makes it a ton of fun to experiment with all the different abilities, but it also allows you to approach and solve problems how you want to, even if that isn't necessarily the intended way, which is something I can always appreciate. Now, on top of all that, what really ties the movement together is how everything is contextualized around Bogey being a plane. Not only do most of his movement abilities involve him using his wings, thrusters, or propeller blade, but there's also a clear focus on speed and aerial mobility even when you're not literally flying through the map. And while not tied to the movement, I also wanted to mention that I really liked how instead of stamina, you need to manage your engine's heat, and how the HUD looks like something straight out of Ace Combat with the neon green display, lock-on targeting, and things like velocity and altitude meters. Moving on, another thing that I really enjoyed about the abilities in AEROMACHINA is how many of them have multiple uses. For example, while your dash is one of your main movement abilities, it's also your primary way of dodging enemy attacks. On the other hand, the Vulcan gun is mainly used to shoot at enemies from a distance, but can also be used to activate buttons you otherwise couldn't reach. Along with that, there's the rotary blade, which lets you double jump while also improving your melee attack power. Meanwhile, the gear greaves allow you to activate platforms, launching yourself into the air, but they can also be used to launch enemies in the air, knock them down, push them away, or even reflect certain projectiles. Overall, I feel like this makes each ability you acquire feel a lot more impactful, as not only do they improve your mobility, but they also enhance your combat capabilities, which is exactly what I'd like to talk about next. Now, when it comes to the combat in AEROMACHINA, what really stood out to me is how fluid it feels. And kind of like with the movement, you can freely chain together various attacks and abilities in different ways. For example, you might start with a few melee attacks, launch an enemy into the air with the gear greaves, and then keep them juggled midair using the Vulcan gun, before dashing in to finish the combo. With that being said though, I do think that at least for the demo, the combat suffers a bit due to a lack of variety. For starters, since there's only like 4 attacks, the amount of combos you can do are pretty limited, and with there only being 3 basic enemy types, you can pretty much deal with most fights by mashing buttons. However, I think this could easily be fixed by adding in some more combat abilities or ways to customize existing ones, as well as some enemies that need to be dealt with in specific ways so you can't just hack and slash without thinking. But I'm more than certain that this will be addressed in the full game, as they mention a plethora of upgradable weapons to exploit any weakness in the game's description. Aside from that though, one last thing that I wanted to mention about the combat would have to be the boss fights. Each one not only had different mechanics and attacks, but also environments that could either be used to my advantage to block enemy attacks, or hazards that forced me to split my attention, making each one feel carefully crafted and designed. Now, concerns aside, I cannot recommend this demo enough. Everything about it, from its fast-paced and stylish combat, to its deep and expressive movement that evolves with every new ability, just feels good. And with how promising this demo has been, I cannot wait for the game's full release, as it's clear that the devs over at Meteor Magic Games are cooking up something truly special. So, if you're anything like me, and this seems like something you'd be interested in, then I'd highly recommend that you try out the demo for yourself, and if you end up liking it, you might as well also wishlist the game on Steam. And with that, mateys, is the end of the video. If you made it this far, I just want to say thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, take care, and I'll see you around, mateys.